Thank you so much, guys. Can you just do a quick intro of yourselves, and then we'll hear what it's really like on the ground in the trenches. Tyler, do you want to start?
Yeah, Neil, everybody, thank you for having me. My name's Tyler Gates. I own a small business, Lazy Mountain Media. We fluctuate between 12 and 15 people, and we do volume post-production for digital media clients all over the world. And I am sufficiently terrified after listening to everybody's talking points today. So, congratulations.
Amazing. Sergio?
I'm Sergio Amorata, Chief Scientist and founder of Zip Radios. We do software and hardware for live video streaming, and we focus mostly on tier one customers. So we're in a very small company as well, but we're in with the big guys. And security audits and security, it's a big part of what we have to take into account when we put any equipment in the infrastructure.
Great. Barry?
Hey guys, yeah, my name's Darius Shillito. I'm based in the UK and I work for the video production company Simply Thrilled. We work on feature films, short films, and commercial films. And sorry about not being here sooner, but I caught the end of that last chat and it seems really interesting. So I'm looking forward to chatting to you.
Great. So yeah, what I wanted this session to be was to really, I mean, it's great if you're like, although actually Carrie was saying it's not as simple as you'd think. But you imagine, oh, you're Disney, you're Warner Brothers, you're fine. Nobody's losing any sleep over you guys. You've got it all sorted. What about me? I have to churn out all this content for all these different clients, on with a probably a limited schedule, limited team, limited budgets. And these small companies like yours are, probably the bulk of production that happens around the world, is smaller companies. And I thought it would be really interesting to hear kind of what your experience is and kind of what your clients are thinking, and how do you help keep your clients safe and secure? And Tyler, maybe start with you, like kind of talk a bit more about kind of your business and kind of what your clients expect and kind of what you see, especially given the conversation we've had here, kind of what are the what are the vulnerabilities and kind of opportunities in that? It would seem like you've got so much stuff coming through that at any point something could go in unnoticed potentially.
Yeah, I mean, well, we had I would say our two biggest challenges are always like hardware, like keeping up with what are the hardware and software needs, kind of the technical capabilities that we need, because we all work off of one server. That server is 100 terabytes or more, and to these algorithms that are jiggling the handle to see what's vulnerable or not, we look like a bank in terms of just the amount of data that we have. And so we just the scale of our data raises our profile for bad actors, and we have to make sure that we've got contingencies in place both for, like we said earlier, prevention versus recovery. And then the other big challenge that we have is a lot of our employees are former freelancers, and they were just used to holding things on little hard drives and doing this and that, and now they're working in a structure and a workflow. And regardless of our policy, if they don't really understand why it's in everyone's benefit that we have these secure processes for our security, then the whole thing, breaks down. I mean, like, we're as safe as our weakest link. And that requires everybody from the assistant editor all the way to our creative director to make sure that they not only understand the what and the why, but really kind of take ownership that we are all how important this is, and they have to be able to internalize that. And that might mean massaging our implementation. How can we do this with their input so that it's not unnecessarily disruptive? But there's no scenario where we can stay secure and have no change in our workflow and have no change in how we do things. And that friction, especially with creative people, can be heavy. So that is the leader's job to really kind of make sure how can we create a system that the staff will actually use and understand the importance of it.
Hmm. Yeah, and if you're a freelancer, it's like I'm already hanging by my fingernails here, and you want me to do one more thing. I mean, it's why not like with dairy, it simply throw you guys. I remember when we taught you guys done content for the NHS, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I've got it. See the friction. We got security equals friction here, which means you have to have a host who's more on top of it than I am today. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, we have. Yeah, we've worked with the NHS on a number of occasions, and there is, as you'd imagine, there's a lot of security matters with working with health organization. I think the we have to do. We recently do an induction pack on bowel cancer. So there's a lot of procedures that people get screeners sent to their door, and we need to approach the presentation of like the videos in a very particular way. I think the clients have to make sure that all the requirements are met, all of the information is presented keenly, but they can't give us all of the information. Um, that sometimes causes friction because there's some like documents that we're not allowed to have access to because we're not trained medical staff, and that's we just figured out a way to work around that. We've kind of been very reliant on the client in that regard. So, but we've worked with the NHS for about I think like 8 years now on probably about 20 different projects. So we've made a way to work it. But there's another thing. So we would share our videos with them using Dropbox, but Dropbox isn't allowed on the NHS like internet. So like anyone that's using a work-based computer, they can't open Dropbox because it just doesn't go past their firewall. So that causes friction, as you say.
So I mean, and that's the thing too with working. I mean, it's the cliche now. Everybody's a broadcaster now. And if you're a corporate, you're creating lots of content. Any business creates lots of content, and so I guess you have that both ways where they may have content that is sensitive, or maybe procedures that are sensitive, or stuff around staff or personnel. And then, likewise, you're going to have requirements of them. I mean, how does what's your experience been? And Sergio, maybe you can kind of talk about what some of the bigger issues you've seen around security, like when you're dealing with a corporate, or you're dealing with these different types of organizations that aren't just a media company. What are some of the things you run into?
Right. Well, the smaller companies, they assume what you give them is secure and they leave it at that, right? And then they're an accident waiting to happen if they buy a product which is typically bought by price that doesn't have the proper security, the proper firewall built in, the proper it's a Linux based on a Linux distro that's never maintained or updated. That's on the smaller companies. The larger companies, which would deal the most, are very much aware of the risks, and they still, in some cases, they buy the cheap, unsecure stuff with the understanding that it's unsecure, and they put it on a bubble so that that insecurity is mitigated, is controlled, is minimized. For the broader reaching deployments, the larger companies, they make you go through an entire security audit that lasts a month or years before your product can make it there. And we've been in both sides of the spectrum, and we've seen how the very, very large tier one customers still use unsecure products that are known to have holes in them because they have to suddenly buy 400 encoders for a particular project. They go buy the cheap Chinese $400 encoders with the knowledge that they're not the best, they're full of holes, but they're going to put them in isolation, that type of thing.
That's super interesting. Tyler, what about you working with those? Because you have a variety of different clients, right? Or some of those corporate clients.
Yeah, we do. I would say for most of the stuff, if something needs to go out on YouTube and we're repurposing a lot of stuff, it's frankly not so sensitive. In fact, they want as many eyeballs, even if it's a bunch of hackers, they don't really care. However, we do have NDA agreements with broadcast companies or production companies that we're handling sensitive material that has a lot behind it. I know we're working on a documentary film right now that is using all of the home video library of an NBA Hall of Famer.
Mm.
And so it's like wedding videos and baptisms and Christmas mornings, and it's extremely sensitive stuff. And so the ability for us to say, okay, how do we make sure that this not only doesn't get stolen, but is also used properly, that this doesn't get mixed up and we accidentally put Christmas morning B-roll on a Hallmark commercial because we just had it in our library. Like the idea of accidents being our biggest liability is really true. And it was a Hanlon's razor. Don't attribute to malice that could be better attributed to stupidity. And we all have stupid moments where we might make the wrong move. And so that's why these processes are so important, and to make sure that people maintain that workflow all the way through.
Gary, do you want to jump in on that, like how you're dealing with some of those things from clients and those more sensitive content from clients? And sorry,
Yeah, that's
I
I
don't
think.
understand.
Oh yes,
Sorry.
no, that's I agree with what Tyler was saying there, where it's making sure that the production team know the process, and I think I'll just talk about a feature film that we've just finished, which is came out just in September last year, and it's been released worldwide. It's on Prime in the US and the UK. But before it was released, there was a few shots in it which weren't licensed, which we had to go back in and re-edit because, as Tyler said, people just assumed it was a valid video that we had in our library, which actually could go in the film. It wasn't until I recognized it from a different shoot and realized, okay, we need to make sure this doesn't go in. But on that production, that was, the budget for that was $200,000. So it's a low production feature film. We're going to have crew who haven't got a massive amount of experience, so they might be maybe accidentally make these errors and not really understand the implications or the consequences of that. Fortunately, it was fine, and we figured it out. But I think that is a big security issue. Just having trained staff, because we had 280 staff on that film. I think probably 80 of them were students. So because that was just the type of production it was. So I think training people in the process of it is really important, and I think that's the most sort of closest our production company comes to like making sure the security is right. But working with clients, like we've got about maybe over 150 terabytes of footage working with clients that we've stored on three different hard drives in our office space and at my home and then at my co-founder's home. And that in itself is like a minefield because we keep footage for maybe 3 years just in case a client comes back for, like some extra work. And then after 3 years, we delete the footage to make space because ultimately there's only so much space you can have for these files. Um, so we're trying to figure. So the way to counter that is we're trying to find cameras that shoot high quality footage, but on lower file sizes, so we can store things for longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Sony FX6 is quite good at that. So we're starting to move towards using the Sony FX6 over the Blackmagic and the Arri cameras that we have used in the past.
It's really interesting. I think there's just so much that's interesting about that, just the practicalities of shooting stuff and practicalities of getting a production done, and that cascade effect of like how it affects security further down the line. So just that thing of like, I just can't be filling up these drives all the time. So then you're you're looking at changing your cameras, which then is going to affect how your storage, and your storage is going to affect security. And also that training. I have a sense that uh, all you need now is a bunch of YouTube videos and some AI, and you can do anything. And I feel like there's a whole group of people entering the workforce with that. At least if they don't think that, they're being told that. And I wonder where that's going to get us in later years. um, Sergio, how are you seeing that? Like in terms of like people coming in and needing, like what do people really need to know, and how do people learn this stuff? When they're not sitting at a broadcaster, for a decade, learning this as they kind of go up the ladder of employment, and they're just a freelancer.
It's a big challenge because in the broadcast industry, the transition from your legacy media and cable and SDI to IP has left a lot of very talented people in the dark. There's a huge gap on IP networking in general by these individuals. And when you combine that with the fast pace of AI and how AI leverages the network to get into everything, I mean, it's a challenge for both large and small organizations to have the people with the skills to first understand networking, and second, understand how to protect from legacy cyber attacks and new cyber attacks, AI based, or through these networks, through your software that's now suddenly connected to another machine in another office, and you don't realize it's going through the internet. That type of thing. There's this. It's a huge challenge, and I think companies, they have an uphill battle that they're not going to win as far as training individuals within the organization with the skills needed. They're going to have to rely on companies that provide these services. You're going to have to start trusting companies, and that's where the certifications come in, right? Where this company is certified by this or that standards compliant, so that their solutions have a certain requirements, minimum requirements of encryption. And it's not only the software that you provide as a company that gets certified. The company itself is vetted by these requirements, whether the European or the American ones, the ISO this or the Digital Act. The company itself is audited as far as how does it source its data, what policies does it have for the internal usernames and password, how they run the company is part of the compliance, the certification. So the businesses will have to rely on those certifications to pick and choose their providers, their solutions.
Thank you. I think okay, so now we're going to get everybody on for our concluding session, and we're going to develop that company, and then we're going to pitch it and make millions.